So it's been an eventful 48 hours in British politics. And there's a lot of focus on two by-elections, particularly the Copeland by-election. So I just want to discuss this a little bit and then a few other things going on in British politics at the moment. So there's once again renewed calls for Jeremy Corbyn to consider his leadership position. Um, just to reiterate what has happened, and for my international viewers, I should explain a by election is basically um, what happens when a sitting MP either dies or resigns or has to leave office for another reason. Hence, the seat needs a new representative. So, to give a bit of context, Copeland is seen as a strong Labour seat. Um, Labour will say it's marginal, but it has been in Labour hands for many decades. I've seen sources suggesting 82 years. Um, and yesterday, Trudy Harrison, the Conservative candidate, won the seat over Labour's Gillian Troughton. Trudy Harrison got 13,748 votes to Labour's 11,601 votes. So that was a comfortable victory for the Tories. Theresa May visited wearing a token blue scarf, and I have not seen a party leader looking so visibly happy for a very long time. She could barely contain her joy at this victory. It is significant because it's the first time a government, a governing party, has won a by-election since 1982, when the Tories won a seat that year from a Labour incumbent. And some sources are even suggesting that it is the most profound government victory in a by election since 1878, which is almost 140 years ago. That was the Worcester by election, when um, the Conservative, I'll just get his name now, just bear with me a second. The Conservative John Darby Allcroft won the Worcester by-election in 1878. So this is very significant. Now, in British politics, a by-election doesn't make a huge demographic change because we're talking about one MP, one seat out of 650. However, by-elections are seen as pointing to the trajectory of which way a party is going. And generally speaking, opposition parties are expected to win by-elections. Now, there was another by-election yesterday in Stoke-on-Trent, and I feel somewhat sorry for the winner of that contest because his victory is being totally overshadowed. Um, Gareth Snell of Labour, only 31 years old, defeated the UKIP leader Paul Nuttall. That is actually quite significant in itself because, as Jeremy Corbyn pointed out, Stoke-on-Trent had been a hotbed for UKIP support for a while. That by-election was triggered by the resignation of Tristram Hunt, who's very much seen as a Blairite. He's now taken up directorship of the Victoria and Albert Museum. There's no question about it, Labour right now is in a bit of a mess, and has been for a very long time. Emily Thornberry, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, denied that this was anything to do with the fact that Copeland is close to the Sellafield nuclear site. Actually, Sellafield must come under that constituency. And there had been a perception that Jeremy Corbyn is opposed to nuclear power. She robustly denied this and said it's an example of fake news. Now, whether that's the case or not, I don't know. But Corbyn was putting on a brave, some would say arrogant face by refusing to take any personal blame for what has happened. It's always difficult for a leader because if he does turn around and say, yeah, it was entirely my fault, that would kind of play into the notion that he's a weak leader. On the other hand, by not doing that, it just looks like he is kind of shoving Labour's problems under the carpet and downplaying what is a serious issue here. I mean, for Labour to lose a Labour seat when a Conservative government that is imposing austerity, that's a serious matter. There has been interjections from heavyweight figures in the party. David Miliband, former Foreign Secretary, has said he's deeply concerned. He's refused to rule out a return to politics. Tony Blair a few weeks ago was very vocal in his criticism of Jeremy Corbyn. Now, those who hate Tony Blair within the party, and there's no shortage of people in Labour who dislike Tony Blair, would blame him for losses like this. But I think when it comes down to it, it is true that there has been a hostile media from the very start to Jeremy Corbyn. And there have been times when I think that has been petty and borderline trash journalism. For example, attacks against his appearance and so on is just those sort of ad hominem attacks I've no time for. However, ironically, what Corbyn is doing is a bit Trump-like, blaming the media for everything. Um, there is no question about it. Labour at the moment is a deeply, deeply divided party. And it seems to be going through something of an identity crisis because sometimes I can't really understand Labour voters. What I mean by that is when you see Labour people interviewed, they always say, oh, Labour no longer represents its roots. Labour is no longer a working class party. Well, the Labour Party elects a leader that's pretty far to the left. I could understand that claim when Tony Blair was leader because Blair brought the party to the centre. Some would say too far to the centre. But in Jeremy Corbyn, you have a genuinely socialist leader. And traditional Labour people still complain. So I don't really know what they want. It could be that Jeremy Corbyn has tapped into the progressive side of the party, that is to say, the virtue signalling side of the party, which actually traditional Labour people don't have much time for. I mean, traditional Labour working men's clubs are very politically incorrect. They're not bastions of progressive politics. In fact, they probably have a lot more in common with, frankly, UKIP. So there could be something in that. I don't mean, by the way, the UKIP leaders. I'm talking about the UKIP ideology. Because UKIP has been, whatever you think of them, they've been very effective in garnering all Labour votes. Um, and that's why today, arguably, UKIP could vie to be the official opposition. Now, I am not a fan of UKIP, not at all. I believe they offer no answers. I believe they're a populist bunch of rabble rousers, quite frankly. I have no time for them. But nor do I have much time for Jeremy Corbyn's brand of hard left Labour politics. And the problem is, Mr Corbyn really is living in the time warp, like it's the 70s or the 80s. And I think that's unfortunate because a lot of the message that Labour has, a lot of the issues that they raise are valid. The Tories are doing things that need to be challenged. But when you have a leader who has some very questionable positions, I do think that it needs to, I sympathise with the centrists in Labour at the moment because they know full well that centrism is the only way that Labour is going to get elected in this country at this time. I mean, the hardcore Corbynistas, Corbyn supporters, are forever going to denounce the centrists, call them Tory sellouts and all the rest of it. But the thing about hardcore Corbynites is they blame the media, they blame the Blairites, and they never seem to understand that you cannot be a party of government if you don't branch out. They cannot seem to grasp that. Now, in Scotland, it's even more confusing because, again, in Scotland, the main complaint is that, oh, Labour has lost its way. And just as UKIP takes Labour votes in England, the SNP has taken Labour votes in Scotland. And it's very difficult because Labour's a unionist party by nature. Jeremy Corbyn's a unionist, one area where I will give him credit on. But if Labour is seen to be a unionist party in Scotland, the SNP has created such a toxic atmosphere up there that anyone who is seen to be unionist is branded Tory-esque. So it's this perverse alignment of unionism with Toryism, which is utterly absurd because there's many left-wingers who support the union message. Um, so I just don't know where Labour lies right now. And I'm not a Labour member, I'm not a Labour supporter, and I don't think I will be. In fact, some of Jeremy Corbyn's hard left positions is one reason I don't like Labour, but the other reason actually is from some centrists in the party. You know, I'm not sort of overly enthusiastic about them either, because you get centrists like Harriet Harman who seem to spend more time attacking Jeremy Corbyn and coming out with very strange attacks. I mean, recently she was talking about his lack of representation for women, despite the fact that two of the most senior people in the party, Emily Thornberry and Diane Abbott, as Shadow Foreign Secretary, Shadow Home Secretary, are women. Um, so, although I'm not a Corbynite, I don't think that the centrists are necessarily helping matters by constantly chiding a Corbyn over different things. I think the problem with Labour at the moment is there's basically two parties. And for the centrists and the Blairites, they feel they're never going to win with Jeremy Corbyn as leader. And for the Corbynites, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, by the way, it's an adjective. If you support Jeremy Corbyn, you're a Corbynite. It's not, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but for them, it's the Blairites that are the problem because they're constantly attacking the elected leader. Well, this is the first thing to bear in mind. Jeremy Corbyn has been through two leadership contests now, and he he survived the second one. So I do think that the centrists have to accept that fact. I think they should either support him or just do it. Go out and form a new party. Um, and you know they will say Labour's just as much ours as it is his. Well, okay, call it the Labour Party, but call it the New Labour Party or the Alternative Labour Party or whatever. But I think at this point, I cannot see any way that the Corbyn faction of the party and the, shall we call it, centrist faction of the party, i.e., the Blair Miliband faction of the party, by which I mean David Miliband, um, they seem to be irreconcilable right now. In fact, I could just as well call it the Khan faction. Khan is the most senior elected Labour official in the country, and I think he's someone to watch. Um, In fact, Sadiq Khan has, I just read today, that he has compared Scottish nationalism to the populism of Donald Trump and others. And I agree with that, actually. I give Khan credit for taking on the Scottish nationalists. This is ahead of his speech to Scottish Labour. Kezia Dugdale has said similar things. He's spot on about that. The Scottish nationalists are a deeply sectarian, divisive party. And there's no question about it because they portray anyone who opposes their divisive agenda for a second referendum as being traitors to Scotland, which is odious. So I think he's spot on about that. So if I was a member of the Labour Party, I'd be feeling pretty disillusioned right now. And it's easy to point fingers. I don't think it's fair to blame it entirely on Jeremy Corbyn because, after all, the Labour Party is supposed to be a democracy, so collective responsibility. Um, However, as leader, there's no escaping the fact that this period will be seen as very divisive. Now, you could blame a hostile media, you could blame centrists wearing down his leadership, but there has also been some positions that Corbyn and his supporters have taken that are really, really questionable. Um, I mean, being from Northern Ireland, I was never easy with the coziness the likes of John McDonnell had for you know, talking the way it did about the IRA. Now, people might say it's the past, but all these things add up and they're indicating factors of what sort of situation you're looking at. If it was that on its own, I would let it pass actually. But there has been a range of things that and there's been a deep intolerance among Corbyn supporters. I mean, getting to the point of vandalising centrist MPs, constituency offices. There's a real nasty, intolerant aspect to a lot of Corbyn supporters. I don't mean everyone, but it is definitely there. And they're as bad as the Scottish Nationals in terms of the sort of sectarian mindset that they have. I find Labour centrists are a lot more broad reaching. That's not to say that they're perfect. I mean, like I said, I don't like the I don't like the militant feminist faction of Labour centrists. That's actually more akin to Labour centrists than the hard left. I'm thinking of people like Harriet Harman and the Birmingham MP, forget her name now, Jess Phillips. That militant feminism I find very off-putting. So basically, Labour right now is, as a centrist, I want to see a strong centrist party in this country. And I think it's not so much that Theresa May is necessarily a very strong leader. In fact, The Economist had an editorial attacking her indecisiveness. It's more that Jeremy Corbyn is presiding over such a divided party that, rightly or wrongly, he is being seen as the biggest agent of getting her re-elected in 2020 or whenever the next election will be. So no wonder she's happy. I mean, if she was going up against a David Miliband or even a Sadiq Khan or someone like that, I think she'd have a tougher job. And I think, I mean, on a personal level, I think Jeremy Corbyn's tough. I'm talking purely in personal terms here because he's weathered an enormous amount of personal attack and criticism. And anyone that can do that is tough. That doesn't mean he's right, and it doesn't mean that he is a strong leader. Personally strong, not necessarily a strong leader. I do think there's a stubborn side to him. I think there is a stubborn aspect where he won't listen to detractors. Um, and so that seems to be the situation that Labour is in now. I detest the SNP and their agenda, so I really hope that Labour can resurge in Scotland. And I say Labour because I don't think the Tories can. Quite frankly, I believe so strongly in this United Kingdom that I would want any party short of far right or far left to prevail in Scotland over the SNP, because frankly, this country is more important than any political party, and the SNP's agenda is a threat to this country. Final thing, I'll just close with this, and it's not really connected to anything, but it's just a piece of news. David Waddington has passed away, Lord Waddington. He was Home Secretary for a short time, 1989 to 1990, Margaret Thatcher's last Home Secretary, something of a combative and controversial figure. He also served as Governor of Bermuda from 1992 to 1997. So I'll leave it there. If you're a member of the Labour Party, let me know what you think. Um, I don't think it's good to have an opposition that is in such disarray. It is healthy in a democracy to have a strong opposition. That's not to say that the Tories are a single, we are not a single party country, but the Tories are doing things that need to be scrutinised and attacked. And just to be clear here, I'm not attacking all of Jeremy Corbyn's positions. I'm not attacking all of his Labour Party's positions. Because there's many areas where the Tories can rightly be attacked on. There are things that are going on. There continue to be things that really need to be scrutinised. I'm very concerned about this new rule that the High Court has approved of saying that foreign spouses need to make £18,600 before they come into the UK. I have a big problem with that. I think it's discriminatory and, well, it's for another video, but, that is where Labour can be a strong party, and it's where we need Labour. And I would be saying the same thing if it was a Labour government. I would say we need a strong Tory opposition or a strong Liberal opposition, whatever it would be. The Greens, I think, are a joke. I don't take the Greens very seriously because their policies are so far out there but that's beside the point. Okay, this has been a bit longer than I intended, but there were quite a few things to cover because I haven't spoke about British politics for a while, so leave it there. Thanks for watching. By the way, if for my international viewers, if you have any questions, I'll try my best to answer.